everybody. It's Wednesday evening, 7 o'clock Central. I'm at Dillahunty. Welcome to Hang Up. What am I hung up on? Wow, trying to get back to normal. It struck me. I mean, granted, we're a couple of weeks into it now. It's 2023. And, you know, I focused a lot on politics and the election stuff here, even more than the religious discussions, although I'm happy to have both of them. By the way, this is a call-in show. You can get your calls in now. The lines are open. We've already got one caller on hold, so there's room for a couple more. If you're a theist, you're always going to go to the front of the line. Please bring your A game. And believe it or not, neither myself nor my guests are here to try to trick you. We just like to have the discussions. And so all you got to do is listen to the question and remember that I don't know is a perfectly acceptable answer in most cases. As a matter of fact, it's probably the one that's most correct. But I just realized that, you know, here we are, 2023. We're getting ready to start the 2024 election cycle, and we just elected a Speaker of the House. We just finished up the last round of elections. And we finally have a Speaker of the House after, 15, 16 votes, something like that. And then there's at least one representative from New York who's a big old liar, who now that people are calling for him to resign, and ethics investigations. He's lied about his heritage. He's lied about his degree. He claimed that he graduated from two different universities, one with a bachelor's, one with a master's, and then it turns out he has no degrees from anything ever. And he wants to say that he fibbed and embellished a little bit. Whether you're a Republican or Democrat, you don't get to defraud the public in your attempt to win an election. I know that, you know, Donald Trump and some others may have set the bar pretty low with what you can say and not be called out on. But if you're just going to lie about your resume in order to become elected, an elected official, you should expect what's happening, which is, hey, let's, I would say that if he doesn't resign soon, there needs to be some sort of recall election or vote of no confidence, et cetera. What's strange is that Kevin McCarthy, who's the new Speaker of the House, said he wants to deal with this internally. I don't see that this is remotely an internal issue for the House. Apart from, you know, hey, there's an ethics investigation. There are other concerns about how somebody who makes $55,000 a year can loan himself or loan his election $700,000. That said, I also heard about President Biden evidently had some classified material that he shouldn't have had somewhere. And of course, all the people who wanted to, you know, blow off Trump having that stuff are trying to, look, the Democrats, they did it. Oh, and it's worse. And he did it and it's worse. It's worse. That's actually not at all worse. They want to make it sound like it's worse because he didn't have the ability to declassify this stuff himself. Neither did Trump, and it didn't matter. But what was happening is that Biden's lawyers found it, turned it over immediately. They didn't need to call the FBI. There didn't need to be a raid because nobody's trying to hide anything. Nobody's trying to pretend like they had a right to something they didn't have. It's not surprising to me, and it wasn't surprising to me at all to find out that Trump had documents that at Mar-a-Lago that were classified. I'd be so shocked if every president doesn't wind up with some classified document somewhere. I would like for there to be proper controls. You know, when I was in the military, I had security clearance, not, you know, top security clearance, but I had security clearance. And when you're dealing with classified documents, there were burn bags, there were things you had to throw out. And you know what? Somebody's going to screw up at some point. They just are. Especially when you're moving around from place to place. So it's not remotely surprising to me that happened. The difference here was in what the documents were and what they decided to do about it. And is there some hypocrisy? Yeah, there's hypocrisy everywhere. It doesn't surprise me at all that the Democrats have screwed up some stuff as bad or worse than Republicans have. That wasn't the point of all of it. And so dealing with all this and realizing that we're getting ready to start the 2024 election cycle, we're still dealing with, you know, George Santos and a bunch of other stuff. We just got a new speaker. I'm trying to figure out what the new normal is. Now, for me, I mean, I'm not going to go into all my new projects, but in addition to doing the hang up here on Wednesday nights on the line, I'm also doing the Sunday show, which is going gangbusters, and we love it. And the line network's growing. We've got, I think Forrest and Aron just did like a 7-hour show the other night on Skeptalk, where it was, about evolution. It's amazing. It's I'm thrilled by all that, and we also know that yes, I've started an exotic pet hobby that's turning into a business. I just sold off my first volley of rats the other day. So there's a lot going on, and I've also people started reaching out to me for conventions. I know the American Atheist Convention is coming up Easter weekend in Phoenix. And the Secular Student Alliance just reached out to me for their convention, which is going to be in the St. Louis area in June. I'll have more information about that as we get closer. I'm probably going to do a couple different workshops, one of them on magic and skepticism as a way of kind of teaching and the history there, and another one on debates as well as a panel. So I'm looking forward to going up there, not the least of which is, my brother lives up in that area, so I'll get to visit family a little bit. But it's every day, it's a matter of trying to figure out what the new normal is, because there was a period of time where I wasn't particularly political and didn't care that much about what was going on. And that changed well before 2016. It happened probably 20 years ago, where I started paying a lot more attention to what's going on. And yet, it didn't used to feel like this. Like, in 2012, 2008, I didn't sit around obsessing over stuff and trying to figure out how I was going to sort out the features of my life around the schedule of political endeavors and the constant, like every election didn't feel like it was the most important thing we'd ever do. And it felt like honesty was maybe not being rewarded, but dishonesty was certainly more likely to be punished. And now we live in a world that's almost post-truth. I mean, George Santos is sitting there saying he expects to be put on committee and will join on any and happily serve any committee that he's granted, when I don't even think he should remain in office, let alone be put in charge or put on a committee. Why on earth? This is an individual who seems to be almost a habitual liar, who lied about all kinds of things, including the things nobody should ever really lie about. If you're running for office, you don't lie about what degrees you have, whether or not your ancestors were Jews who escaped the Holocaust. I'm just baffled at how this isn't like an immediate disqualification. But of course, you have Lauren Boebert up there making claims and proclamations, and she has no idea what she's talking about, and barely won. And yet that ultra right MAGA crowd is basically using all their leverage to try and shut McCarthy down. I don't understand what's going on, how a tiny, tiny, tiny group of people in the House of Representatives can exercise so much power and control over this. But in any case, what I decided to do today is keep my word. And that is, back in December, I was going to have Mandisa on the show, and I got sick that day and was not feeling good and was not feeling like doing a show. And I was like, I'll get you back on as soon as I can. And this was the first slot where I did not have a guest. So please welcome, from Black Nonbelievers, my friend, Mandisa Thomas, who's here. And I got to tell you, I know we're going to go over stuff with Black Nonbelievers affiliates and what you guys are looking for. But first, welcome. And what the hell is normal for you now? How have you found a new normal, or have you found it at all?
Well, first, it is good to see you again, Matt. And thank you to everyone who is tuning in this evening. Happy New Year again. I don't think I've ever experienced a normal in my life. And I was thinking about what you said about a lot of these politicians and the George Santos, and how he lied basically about his about his background and about his education. And a question that I have, and I think a normal for me is that skepticism, is looking at and thinking about, well, first, how was this information not fact checked? If and also, um, what are the requirements or the qualifications? Were they that strict or stringent to where this person felt like they had to lie, about their credentials? Um,
Yeah. I don't think
it begs the question. It's like you said. If he's a pathological liar, definitely shame on him. But in politics, it's almost as if you must be groomed to do these things, which is why I don't think I would ever. I couldn't be a politician for one. But it just begs a lot of questions there as to how this slipped through the cracks, and if someone did find something, were they threatened? I mean, was there, what was, I guess, what, how was this allowed, basically, to this degree, that this person was able to get away with it for, I'm not sure how long he's been in office or how long he's been in politics, but it does beg the question as to what was that vetting process and how, that slipped through.
Yeah.
Um,
I think most of the lying was done. Not I mean, there's not an interview process, and I don't think he necessarily lied on. I mean, he's qualified to be a representative because basically that's just a live in the area, be a certain age, et cetera. And so there's not a vetting process for this. I think the problem here is that the Republican Party didn't do a very good job of vetting him because it wasn't until just before or just after the election that a local news paper kind of started saying, "Hey, he said this, and it's a lie." And it's not like he didn't lie under oath or on any. Well, he may have lied on some significant paperwork, but by and large, it's like he's running around getting people to vote for him, saying, "Hey, I'm Jewish, and
right.
oh, I graduated from this university and this university." So it's just lies are just falling out of his mouth and through the daily course of, "Hey, I'm going to run and talk to people." And what I find funny is that I'm pretty sure that some significant portion of politicians, while they're out glad handing, shaking hands, running for, making promises that they're probably not going to be able to keep, most of them are going to lie. Most of them are going to lie about something non-trivial. Unfortunately, people generally lie a lot. And it's usually trivial stuff, hey, oh, hey, you're looking great, or it's so nice to see you, or whatever it may be, where we're going to, this is what we do to keep up appearances and keep things going. But he's lying about just stuff that I can't imagine anybody running for office would have the absurdly ginormous ego to lie about. You have to know you're getting caught. You're trying to
Right.
become a public figure.
Right. Absolutely. And I definitely can see that. And part of me thinks of, the perception of leadership, right? Because this is something that, as we go into talking about Black non-believers and the transitions that we've been going through, and any form of leadership and politics, and politicians certainly go through this as well. What the expectations of politicians are, the expectations of people who are in leadership, and sometimes the very unrealistic expectations of people. Um, I know that a lot of people don't trust politicians because, like you said, they may lie about trivial things. And it also comes off as, just being very, it comes off as being very fake at times. People can kind of see through, what these people are saying. But also, the climate almost perpetuates that. The climate almost
Right.
expects it, that these people, that people in these positions are held to this standard, and as if they're not human beings, as if they make a mistake, then it's a hard fall. And so you have to almost keep this up to the point where there may be a lot of pressure. And the moment that, and everyone else is allowed to make mistakes, but you in certain positions. And then when that happens, people are like, oh, well, you're like almost the worst person in the world. So now, granted, I don't feel bad for George Santos, especially when he, when he made up these ridiculous lies and these fabrications for, especially for his credentials, because those can be checked. Like you said, the Republican Party probably did not do their due diligence, and as we've seen over the past 4 or 5 years, there is sort of this anti-intellectualism, that has that has been at the forefront of, well, people don't want the usual politics anymore, but at the same time, it's like, wow, there does have to be, especially if, whether you did go to these, schools or if you didn't, right? If you did or if you didn't, there needs to be, there definitely has to be that integrity when it comes to, your level of education, and also about your background, because like you said, people can fact check. But sadly, we saw the previous president say things that were egregiously untrue, and people didn't care. It was sad how they didn't care, and a lot of people seem to have fed into the circus. And I think
It's
normal
strange
for
to me.
me. Yeah, it is pretty strange, and I think in this age of social media, in this age of having to vet through which news source or which sources are valid and credible, and our position is that we look at the evidence, we look at what is presented, whether it is valid and valid enough to be taken, and we draw our own conclusions. But people are still maybe just kind of hanging on to the first thing they see, or maybe the first thing they hear that may resonate with them. But then also, it just seems to me that there was a huge process, especially when it came to this guy, that really, really fell through the cracks there. And it just got way out of control. And I also think that the January 6th incident, tragedy, has really woken some people up to some things and
I
seeing
hope so.
things differently. Yeah, and I hope it does too. I really does. We are still seeing a level of privilege that is manifesting itself, and that certain people think that they can just get away with it simply because they say it, and without accountability. I'm not sure if he's apologized or at least acknowledged that he messed up. I don't know. Maybe you can
Yeah.
tell me something different.
No, it's been the Democrats lied too, that kind of thing. That was the closest he came.
Okay.
And I'm in a different thing, because like for years, people have been, and what, no attempted lie or attempted dishonesty, but they've been misrepresenting my credentials. They'll be like, oh, Matt went to seminary, when I've never claimed that. What I'd said early on was I had the intent of going to seminary, but I found my way out of religion before I actually went to seminary, and seminary wouldn't have been required. It was just one of the things I wanted to do. But that turned into, oh, Matt went to seminary, and Matt was a preacher, and all these other things. And I'm constantly striving to correct that. And despite having countless, clips of me out there correcting this misinformation, it still creeps up from time to time. And imagine, when you've got someone who's not only not trying to correct the misinformation, but is actually spreading that misinformation as well, in a culture where the people don't trust the news, they don't trust science, they don't trust the other side. It's, even the sites that are dedicated to Oh, I don't trust Snopes. Okay. Why not? Well, it didn't tell me what I wanted to hear. Well, okay, that explains a lot. If there was some methodological problem or some factual data issue that was keeping people from getting to the truth, I could understand that. But it seems like a good chunk of people are just like, oh no, this is how I view the world. This is what I think is true, and anybody who disagrees with me, they can't possibly be correct. It's exhausting, and I guess that makes the new normal really difficult. I know we got calls waiting, and I want to make sure we get to them. So let's jump in here. Black Nonbelievers got 6 affiliates currently. You're looking for organizers for a couple of them, but you're also always on the lookout for other potential affiliates. So tell us a little bit about the organization, what you guys are looking for, what the process would be, and how people can contact you to help out.
Absolutely. So I do want to say that Black Nonbelievers, in our now almost 12 years of existence, has had people who've come through our doors, whether as members, whether as organizers and volunteers. We've had people come, we've had people stay, we've had people go. And we've had affiliates that have come and gone. I am very happy to say that this year, within this past week, we've had affiliates in Detroit and Chicago come back. Shout out to Cynthia McDonald, who is heading up the Chicago affiliate. Kelly King, who is over our Detroit affiliate. Tina Marshall, who is over our Charlotte affiliate. Right now, we still have an affiliate in Columbus, Ohio, and Richmond, Virginia that needs organizers. And the process to become an organizer and a volunteer for Black Nonbelievers really isn't as difficult as people might think it is. Right? So it is, we do have a form on our website that you fill out. There is an interview process. We do like to, and I will say that I personally am a part of this process as well. I like to try to find out what your experience is with organizing, and it doesn't have to be extensive. We are the type of team that will help encourage, develop, and train you to be an organizer. We are looking for people who are engaging and friendly, who do know how to speak to people, who do know how to, at least engage in conversation that isn't always a debate, because we have to remember that it is a community building process, and that we are encouraging people coming out of religion or other indoctrinated thinking, because religion and God, the God concept, is not the only one. So there is an interview process, and we are looking for people who are self-starters, independent, and you can work together as a team. You can bring ideas to the table, that you are not easily discouraged. You are open to to trying new things, thinking outside of that box, if you will, because really at the end of the day, it is about engaging people and on the basic levels. So if you are a person who is enthusiastic, if you are interested in helping people, and interested in helping within the scope of the mission of Black Nonbelievers, which is on our website, then you are more than welcome to contact us. You can write into us on the website or fill out the form. We will get back to you immediately. We will start that process of the interview and seeing where you are, and your availability and capability of being an organizer with us. And please don't let if you are in a city where we already have an existing affiliate, for example, Atlanta, we could use some assistance. We can use some assistance with event organizing, event coordinating, tabling, doing all of the things that we do as an organization to keep us consistent, because consistency is very, very important to us. And it doesn't mean that you have to take every spare minute out of your free time. We only ask that you do what is in your capability. But if you are, and if you already, if you enjoy our events and you enjoy our programming, we welcome you to be a part of our team as well. So the best way to get started is to reach out to us on our website. And if you are connected to me on social media, whether it is through Facebook, whether it is through Instagram, or if you are a patron of mine as well, you can reach out to me and I will respond to you personally if you would like more information. And so, and I'm very excited about the fact that we are in 2023, that we are onboarding new affiliates as well as affiliates where we were inactive for previously, and ready to get this off the ground. And if I may, Matt, I would like to throw in that one of the events where you will be this year is for our annual BNC Con. So Matt will be one of our guests for BNC Con 2023 in November. And that information is also on our website. You can register and book for our annual cruise convention today. So if any of this sounds of interest to you, please do reach out, and we will be more than happy, to work with you as you are willing to work with us.
It's of interest to me, since I'll be there.
Yes, it's going to be amazing.
I'm looking forward to it. Hey, so we got callers on hold. I want to actually address a couple of things. I was told right before we went on the air that Jeff Beck died. So my condolences to his family and loved ones. He was 78, one of the greatest classic guitarists, and not classical, but classic rock guitarists of all time. Although I was not like a massive Jeff Beck fan. I'm definitely familiar and understand his influence a little bit. Somebody just in chat said that Trump's just been indicted. I'm not seeing an actual news article on that at all. Just that there's a watch for a potential indictment as well. So who knows what's actually happening. But we have callers, and I'm going to start off because I always put this at the front of the queue. And so we have Trey K in Arizona, pronouns are he, him, has a question for us about, I guess, Native American schools. So welcome, Trey.
Hi, Trey.
Hi. Hi, Matt. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're on the line.
Oh, okay. Hi, Matt. I just wanted to let you know that this is an honor to actually hear you, to actually talk to you. But just I want to get one thing clarified real quick. Am I a theist if I practice indigenous practices but do not believe into the spiritual stuff?
You'll have to ask your question again. I couldn't hear you.
Okay, one second. The question is, do you think that I'm a theist due to the fact that I practice my indigenous beliefs, but...
Okay, I got the question.
Yeah, it kind of. What I heard, Trey, was practice my indigenous beliefs, but here's the question: do you believe there's a God? Okay, well, we lost that caller. The question that he was going to ask, I'm going to go ahead and address because it's really easy for me. He was wanting to know my thoughts on Native Americans teaching their traditional religious beliefs in schools, I'm assuming on reservations on native lands, however. And the truth is, I don't know anything about it, nor do I have any strong thoughts, nor am I a legal expert on tribal sovereignty in the United States. I don't know what the limits are on it. I can tell you, setting aside any legal things, idealistically, I would like for the education everywhere, in every nation, sovereign or otherwise, to be secular, reality-based, and to leave religion out of it. as much as possible. Apart from like teaching about the world, so you know what's going on in the world.
Right. I think also another part of the question that he was asking was he a theist if he practices his indigenous beliefs but doesn't see them as being spiritual. Now, that could be equated to what some people who are identify as Jewish, um, how they identify as culturally Jewish, right? They may not necessarily believe in the God or gods of the Torah, but they still may practice certain rituals. And I think that may be true for a number of people, but we didn't get a chance to delve into how deeply does he practice, right? Because there are a lot of people who who struggle with. They may not necessarily subscribe to, the concepts of the gods or gods of those beliefs anymore, but there are still things that they practice. So I can understand how, someone would be conflicted by that, or they may feel like maybe they're not being true to themselves or to others. And I think that's a common thing that people struggle with, especially when they are deconstructing those beliefs. And that is certainly something that we don't judge. I personally don't judge that, because it's a process. It's never simply an all or nothing. Some other people may, but that's an interesting part to to process. And hopefully Trey will call back if we have time, to get more information on that, because I think that there are a lot of people who do struggle when it comes to, well, I may not believe this anymore, but coming from this tradition or coming from this community, there are these practices that have come along with, my upbringing or my life. I may still like to practice them, but I'm not sure if it's right for me to anymore. And does it make me this because I still do this? So, and this is, and I think it's important for people to know that this is common. It's a common, it's a common thing for people to have to sit with and think about and deconstruct.
I get that there are things that people care about that are important to their history and their heritage, which I've mentioned many times before is not me. I don't care. I don't care about any of my ancestors, what they did, where they come from. I know some stuff about it. I don't care what they believed, what they practiced, but I might be weird. I understand that some of the stuff has value to people that just has zero. It doesn't register with me at all. But because I don't look at the world and make everybody else fit into the mold that is me, I understand that there are people who are going to value those things. And I don't think that someone who's necessarily practicing to some extent the ritualistic notions of their heritage or what their families practice, that they may or may not be theist. I mean, to me, you're a theist if you are convinced that there's a God. There are plenty of secular Jews who don't believe there's a God at all, but they still go to temple and they rise up on their feet and they do these and they participate in the rituals. So I'm far less concerned with what label theist or atheist fits someone than, as Mandisa was talking about, what they're actually believing and doing. And so I hope we get a chance to talk to Trey some more to find out what it is that he's advocating for, what he does and doesn't believe. But when the question that the call screener had written in there about, hey, what are they teaching in their schools? I don't know what the law has to say, but I do know what I want, which is I want reality-based secular education in all schools for all kids. If you want to also teach them as electives things about their heritage culturally, cool, I got no problem with that. If you are teaching a religion as in giving religious instruction, I do have problems with that, but I don't know what the law is on Native American sovereign land. So
Right.
We have more callers, so let's dig in. Mark in Atlanta, You're on the line.
As elected.
You need to
Hello.
turn that down, Mark, because I can hear the
Okay,
show from 30 seconds ago.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yep.
How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm doing very good. Hello, Mandisa.
Hi, Mark.
Matt, I was wondering if you could settle a question that I have in my head, and it's if say a theist asserted that a skeptic or just any logician was using faith by accepting the three fundamental laws or rules of logic, the excluded middle, and those three. I'm sorry, I can't remember them exactly. But I've heard you say before that, like, I mean, we don't have evidence that those three laws are true, and yet they're the foundation of all of syllogistic logic. And what would your counter argument be to that assertion? That's my question.
It's not an exercise of faith to have presuppositions. The thing about identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle is that you would have to assume that these foundations of logic are correct in order to even try to prove them incorrect. And so it's a matter of practical necessity. They seem to be universally true. They seem to be inviolate, in that there doesn't seem to be any way to prove them wrong. But we don't know that, and we're stuck where we can't know it. So
Right.
this isn't an epistemic thing where, hey, here's a fact about reality. Do I believe it? Well, I don't have evidence, so I'm just going to take it on faith. That's not what this is. This is, hey, what's the foundations of reasoning? Can you prove them? It seems that we can't. They continually demonstrate their usefulness. So it's not just if I were to just take as a presupposition that something can both be and not be what it is in the same way at the same time, well, that would immediately fall apart. But to just acknowledge that we all begin with some presuppositions. I have to take it as a presupposition that you and I share a reality. I don't have any way to prove that there are any other minds. I don't have any way to disprove hard solipsism. And so that's just a pragmatic presupposition. That's at the beginning. That is a foundational view. It's not like having faith about what is or isn't true in reality.
I'm sorry. How is if faith is believing something without evidence, isn't that what I'm doing in this case with that presupposition? The evidence isn't there. I can't reconcile.
Faith is the excuse people give for believing something when they don't have a good reason. But that follows after logic. Okay? Once we have a foundation for logic, everything else you're saying, hey, does the sun is the earth flat? Does the earth orbit the sun? Does it rotate on its axis? Are there fossil rabbits in the Precambrian? All of these things are factual questions about reality, and you use reason to evaluate the evidence to reach a conclusion. Faith is the abandonment of that process of using reason to evaluate evidence to reach a conclusion. And faith has nothing to do with presuppositions. I have to presuppose those things in the same way that every theist on the planet has to presuppose those. The difference is that because they don't want to say that they're presupposing those, they pretend that they have an argument that shows that God is the foundation of those, which is not the case.
Okay. Huh. Wow, that's a lot to think about. I don't know why it's confusing to me, but it is. But yeah, that helps a lot. All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Sure. Thanks.
Okay. Y'all have a good night.
You too.
It's kind of like, maybe you can think of it this way. You need to have a ruler to measure. And if you have a ruler and you have no way to verify that the ruler is justified, that it's valid, that it is properly calibrated, then you have to take it as a presupposition that it is, and then you begin using it. But once you have the ruler, if you just say, you know what, I looked at this wallet, and even though I have a ruler, I'm going to say this wallet is 18 inches long. That's faith. Taking it on faith that when there isn't evidence that this is 18 inches long, that's taking it on faith. When you have a tool and you're abandoning that tool to measure it, or when you say, you know what, I don't necessarily trust that ruler, I'm just going to go with this is 18 inches. That's when you believe something without justification. Saying I'm going to tentatively accept that the ruler is actually correctly calibrated or metered out. That's just a practical necessity. But go ahead, Mandisa.
Right. No, what I was hearing in all of that is, and what this had me thinking about is, if we're in a group, like let's say we're in a group of people, right? We are going to presume that everyone is a logical thinker until we hear them speak. Until we hear, until a subject is brought up and then we start talking. It is from there that we begin to maybe understand whether we have similarities in how, we think or how we come to a conclusion, or whether or not, we're able to do the research, look through the information, or those who are just going to take it based on whatever biases they have or whatever faith they have. That is kind of what came to my mind there. It's like you don't, you kind of give a base for, this premise until you are shown differently. And unfortunately, that is it's almost like a trial and error. We like to think that we're starting off in the same way, but then once we start talking and once we start to see and understand what people's processes are, and whether or not they are following, like you said, the rules of logic and evidence, or they're just taking it on faith, then it's like, well, then those predispositions or those presumptions go away. So that's kind of where that's what I was thinking of, when I was listening to that.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I understand where, especially, if you're like, oh, I can't even remember the identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle. Okay. No offense to anybody, because plenty of people aren't going to be familiar with that. And most people aren't going to have a deep understanding of philosophical issues surrounding epistemology. But if you find yourself in conversations like that and you can't even remember the foundations of reason that you're arguing about, maybe don't get in that argument.
Right.
Maybe, yeah. Oh, I can't remember what this is. Okay. There's lots of things I can't remember. And when I can't remember them, I don't argue for them. The foundations of logic are presuppositions that are a practical necessity. They continue to prove their reliability every single day, all day, without fail. Is it possible that we've made a mistake in assuming them? Sure. But at this point, the overwhelming evidence is in support of reason being reasonable. And so what you get is everything that we think or believe must necessarily be a layer beneath that reason foundation. So let's see. Oh, moving. Trey's back. Yay, Trey, you're back. Here you are.
Hey, Trey.
Hello?
Trey, you're back live on the air.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi. Yeah, hi, Matt. Just to clarify on hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, to clarify what I was saying just a while ago, yes, I am an indigenous man who's practicing his indigenous beliefs, but does not believe in the spiritual aspects of the beliefs.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I was thinking.
What does that involve, Trey?
Well, it's really just me, like doing the dances, doing the things that would be in, like put in as the spiritual aspect as the belief. Like there's a thing we do with certain items in which we believe that there's like a spirit attached to it, but I would still do it regardless of whether or not I believe it, because I want to respect my elders' beliefs.
Okay. So
Gotcha.
are you saying that that's the only thing you really get out of it is a connection to and a feeling of respect for your elders' beliefs?
Yeah, and mostly just because it's really just what I grew up with, and it's just what I really enjoy doing.
Okay. So what part of it, how did you come to your conclusion that you don't believe in the spiritual part anymore? If you don't mind
Ironic,
sharing.
ironically, it's due to the fact that I was also a believing Christian too, and me coming down to the not being convinced of God's existence, I just came down to the conclusion until I see evidence of the spiritual aspects of my indigenous culture, I can't really believe in the spiritual aspect of it.
Okay, so I do have a question for you, Trey. In the practices that some of your elders and other community members still may think have some sort of divine healing purposes to them,
Yes.
you don't necessarily believe that those are true as well, but you are still engaging in the practices.
Yes.
Do you think that may be harmful or helpful to them and yourself? I mean, have you asked yourself that question? Because I know
Yes.
there are some spiritual
Yes,
practices.
I have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And
as of now, yeah.
mm-hmm.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm listening. No. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, the harm that I know that my beliefs are doing is what's going on with my grandfather. Because my grandfather has severe hip problems, and right now, instead of I don't know if he has gone to the doctor or not, but from what I know, from what he's been telling me, he truly believes that somebody in our culture has put a legit spell on him, like black magic stuff. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and that
And
therein lies the problem with many cultural beliefs is that,
yes,
yeah, and I'm sure now you're tasked with, well, how do you convince your grandfather that he does need to go to the doctor and that it isn't a spell that has been cast on him, but this is a serious health issue.
yes,
That
exactly.
right. So, so where is it that you feel that you may draw the line when it comes to it just being a practice, or when those practices, become very detrimental to one's health?
Just only when it comes to detrimental to someone's health, because then I would rather send somebody to the hospital rather than to a medicine man.
Gotcha. Yeah, understood. And again, this is almost this is pretty much similar to the deconstruction process of the Judeo-Christian religions, because we know that there are a lot of cultural practices in indigenous culture, in African cultures, and Latino cultures, and many of them, even if they hold some sort of placebo, right? If they make someone feel good, it isn't necessarily good for, and even if they're harmless, right? They may not necessarily be harming anyone, but like you said, when there is a health issue involved, then there must be reason, or there has to be there has to be some reasonable and evidence-based premise. So I can just imagine what you may be wrestling with there, but the question becomes whether do you just find yourself placating because of those rituals and traditions, or is there a line that you draw when these practices? Go ahead, Matt. Yeah, I'm pretty much done.
Yeah, it's fine. I can have respect for people and not respect their beliefs. As a matter of fact, standing in opposition to their beliefs when they're harmful is probably one of the most respectful things I can do. People will be like, "Oh, so and so called into your show and you talked down to them, blah blah blah." No, if I didn't think there was a good chance that the person listening, or somebody, or that I'm talking to, or somebody else listening, could understand it, I wouldn't waste my time explaining it. I wouldn't, if I didn't respect the person. I wouldn't. I would. Oh, hey, look, hang on. I'm going to be mad almighty. I'm going to put your ass in timeout, even though Ahmad was going to do it because I told you to call in there, Maximus. You're going to talk shit about me in chat? Bring your A game, call in, or I'm going to call you, you cowardly little bitch, and block you. So I can have one of the most respectful things that you can do is to show that you value and care about the person as a human being. And so I don't need to, and nor would I ever. My parents and grandparents, although I don't have any grandparents left, but they believe things. And I won't pretend for a second to respect those beliefs. Not especially if it causes harm. And so for me, the issue isn't so much whether or not you're a theist, it's how you're practicing humanism. And this is a lot of what Mandisa went through, because I'm not going to pretend it's easy. I'm not, my take on this isn't going to necessarily match up with everybody else's. But for me, the compassion that I have for other human beings as part of my humanism does not put me in a position ever where I say, I'm going to patronize them. I'm going to coddle them. I'm not going to lie to them and say that their beliefs are real and true and justified if I don't believe they are. When my grandmother wrote me a letter, my grandma, I still have a letter from her on my refrigerator. She's been dead for a couple of years. I love her immensely and miss her terribly. And when she wrote me to tell me about how she still believes in God, I wouldn't have lied to her. I wouldn't have pretended to share her beliefs, but I'd gone to church with her. I would go to church with her every Sunday for the rest of her life if she were still around. If she wanted somebody to drive her to church, I would do that, and she would know that I don't share her beliefs. I'm not taking her to church because I support the beliefs. I'm taking her to church because she wants to go anyway, and what I believe about her beliefs isn't relevant until her beliefs are actually causing her harm, and I am in a position where I need to intervene. And at that point, my humanism shifts from being compassionate towards another human being without having to try to forcibly correct them to what my thinking is, to this could kill you, so I'm going to stage an intervention. And I think that's the line you're trying to find.
That's exactly
and I think
the line
you found
I'm trying to find. Yeah, it's where, I think the line where I find is where when you start calling all the cause of your problems as black magic.
Yeah.
Right. And the question becomes, when do you take a stand on that? Because I fall on the side of, I don't think it's a good idea to conform to anything simply because it may satisfy other people. Even though at times we have to make compromises when we are in community or whether we are in family, but ultimately you're going to have to find what gives you peace. If that means that you are practicing those cultural, if you are engaging in those cultural practices on the surface, then that's a decision that you can make. But when, like we established, when it is becoming harmful, when it is detrimental to someone's health, whether it's physical or mental, then there has to be, you have to take a stand on that. And it is humane to do. It isn't always going to be comfortable. It isn't always going to be flowery. Sometimes, it just has to be, like you said, based in reality and based on what we know could work or what doesn't.
Yeah, I understand. That's why I've been questioning my beliefs after I actually deconverted from Christianity. Because before my other grandmother had passed away, she was a practicing indigenous person along with as a practicing Christian who also at a church that mushed both indigenous practice and Christianity together. So, I've been moving around Christianity and indigenous practices forever.
Okay, yeah. And just like with the deconversion process for Christianity, the same, and I know that many, especially people of color, and people
Mhm.
who have indigenous backgrounds, right? We hold on to certain parts of that heritage because of the erasure of that history, the
Yeah.
erasure of those
Yeah.
practices.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean, though, that they are any less rooted in evidence or rooted in. Now, there are maybe some natural healing, process or natural healing elements to it, but again, like you said, if
Mm.
it's black magic, then we have to be honest about,
Yeah.
its credibility as well. We
Mhm.
have a right to do that.
Yeah.
Does that
Yeah.
help, Trey?
Exactly. The only thing I actually only do in my the only reason why I would not give up my practice is because, yes, due to the effort of the government trying to erase it, and due to the fact I just love the cultural aspects, but don't believe into the spiritual aspects of the culture.
Yeah, I don't know that the government has a goal to erase it, but it may effectively be the
Yeah, I
same
mean there
thing.
was one like way back when, but I don't
Yeah,
know what their
historically.
ideas on us now.
But yeah, I hope that
Yeah.
helps, Trey. I appreciate you calling back.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, yeah, but anyway, but I've been wanting to have a pastor from my Facebook group I'm a part of to call you, but his deflection of that was having me tell you, Matt, to give him a call for a debate. I mean, how coward is that?
Well, I don't arrange debates. As a matter of fact, literally while I was sitting here talking to you, I got a Facebook message asking me if I would come on somebody's podcast to a debate. That's not quite how any of this works. I don't arrange anything, so I can't
Exactly. And
be
I
I
told
can't
him
be
that
too
I wasn't
upset.
your
I
secretary.
can't be too upset about the pastor telling you to have me call him. He doesn't know me.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're the one that decided to reach out to him to suggest he should debate me. Well, if
Yeah,
I
because
was a
he's a
pastor,
far, like,
I'm
yeah, like
still
he's a real
talking.
far right one. Yeah. Oh, sorry about that.
If I was a pastor and somebody came to me and wanted to argue with me and then said, you should call into this show and debate the dude, I would say, no, you should have that person call me. So I
Yeah.
think he's completely right. Stop trying to put people in debates with me. Suggest that they can call the show if they want to. And if they don't, then they don't.
Yeah. Yeah, because I know two very arrogant theists on this Facebook group I'm a part of, and literally one of them is literally just his thing is just to tell everyone to just shut your mouths and believe it, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right,
but
Trey.
well, thank you for the call. I really appreciate it. This is an honor to call you, Matt. I've been wanting
Yeah,
to
thanks.
call you for a while. Thank you.
Well, you should
Have a nice night, Matt.
go ahead. You too. It's so weird that Mandisa did all the work and heavy lifting in that call, and it was an honor to talk to me, and I should have a good day. Please stop ignoring my friend and guest, people. Mandisa's here to help and did way more work than I did in dealing with that call.
Matt,
It's frustrating.
Matt, the one thing I say is that, this is almost kind of what I'm used to. It's a shame that I have to get used to it, but it's a thing that we still deal with. And for those who appreciate it, please do go to those links in the chat. If you appreciate what you see here, if you appreciate my words, if you appreciate the work that is being done by this platform and my platforms, then you know what to do.
So yeah, we've kept some lines open here. So I don't know what's keeping Maximus from calling in, but call in now or there won't be a next time. So we got Rich in Oregon. Thanks for waiting. You're on the line, Rich.
Hey, Matt, how you doing?
I'm all right.
Hey, Mandisa, it's
Hi.
good to listen to you. I think you kind of led into what my main question is. I've been walking away from Christianity since the 80s and 90s, and I come across something is it better to live your life as if there's no God to come and help you, or do you need to believe it first?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that question, Rich? I'm sorry. You kind of
okay.
went in and out.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is it better to live your life as if there's no God, or is it better to believe it first? So it's a matter of belief or practice.
So
Yes, go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
yeah, so it's if you're an atheist, you don't believe in a God. There are people, I have friends who are lifelong atheists. They've never believed. They don't need to believe. You're no better person whether you never believed or you partially believed or you believe for a period of time. That's not what atheism is. My thing is that atheism, if you're going to put it into practice, there's nothing to put into practice, which is why I'm a skeptic and a humanist first. And so I guess the closest I can come to your question is, are you more likely to be a better humanist if you used to be a believer? And the answer is, I don't see any reason why that would be true. And depending on what your beliefs were before, you could be worse. You could wind up with a bunch of baggage. So there is no orthopraxy for atheism. It's just, I'm not convinced that a God exists. That's it.
Well, I'm not
Right,
convinced there's a God that's going to help me.
Yep.
Right, but even to answer your question, Rich, that is not something for me or Matt to decide for anyone. You know, I think the best thing about our position, and I highly advocate for people to be honest about whether they're an atheist or not, because it does mean the lack of, belief in gods, God, spirit, supernatural beings. You can put them in, that fictional box, and you can live like Matt said. You can live to be the best, humanist as possible. That you're asking, like, it's almost like that that Pascal's wager, or what if, and that is for an individual to decide. I have decided for myself that I don't think any gods exist. I don't care if they exist. And part of me, if there were any gods that existed, then they have some explaining to do, considering all of the tragedies that take place in the world. If anyone is going to live their life based on that presumption or that belief, then there has to be the honesty that comes along with it. But ultimately, that is an individual's decision. I don't hold the cards on that. Matt is not going to sit up here and say that he holds the cards on that. But the best thing for us, as far as who we are as people, is to take that information and that evidence and do with it what is necessary as reasonable and logical people. And not necessarily that we just simply live on that alone, because we are emotional beings. And I think it's important for us to be honest about that. But it's also, that's also up to the individual. We don't, there is no creed that says that we absolutely have to just do this one way. And I think that's part of the problem with the indoctrinated thinking, is that it's usually been, it's either this way or no way. And our position allows us to be open to many different possibilities.
Yeah, I must admit, the only thing that's left of Christianity that I miss is the community, the social aspect of it, not any of the practices.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that keeps people involved. It's probably the most important thing. There's a lot of people who are regularly attending church and participating with that because that is their community.
Yeah. So anyway, that answers my question for tonight. I just want to get your feedback, and I appreciate it. And you too, Mandisa. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Rich.
you. Thank you, Rich.
Have a good one.
Appreciate
You
it.
too.
By the way, I've got the announcements here. We got a couple more calls to get to, and then we'll dig in on Super Chats shortly thereafter. First of all, huge thank you to today's call screener, Quail Coffee. Yay! And to all of our mods who are in chat. So tomorrow is the Transatlantic Call-In Show with Katy and Ben. And on Monday is Skeptalk and it's going to be Forrest. I don't know if it's going to run 7 hours. Maybe we can keep it under 4 if it's just Forrest. We'll have to see. On Tuesday, Owen and Jimmy will be here for hostility. And this weekend, not only will Jimmy and I be doing the Sunday show in the afternoon, but we'll be hosting a special Zoom meetup with all members on Patreon at 7 p.m. Central. So we're going to do the 3 to whenever we stop normal Sunday show. And then starting at 7 p.m. Central, we will be going live with all of the supporters and members on Patreon. Patreon, by the way, is the best way to support the network for those who want to see the show as a podcast in the future. I don't know all the details. I just know the audio-related stuff and the amount of work that Jimmy's got to do getting things out as a podcast tomorrow. Yeah, there's a TACIS tomorrow. I announced it first. Getting things out as a podcast, the support on Patreon is the best way to do it. So as a reminder, just go down the list again. Tonight, it's me and Mandisa. We're almost done, except for, another hour worth of talking and super chats. Tomorrow, Katie and soon Dr. Ben on the Transatlantic Call-In Show. This Sunday, it's going to be Jimmy and I on the Sunday show, followed by a live stream for Patreon members at 7 o'clock. And Monday, Forrest is doing Skeptalk. Tuesday, Owen and Jimmy are doing Hostility. And next week, right here on this show, we just settled it just a minute ago, Heathen Queen's back. So, hooray. I got 2 calls left. Let's try Lucas in Brazil. Hello, sir. How are you?
Hey.
Hi.
Hello. Hello, Mandisa. Hello, Matt. It's good to talk to you guys.
You too.
Yeah, hi.
What's going on?
Thank you for calling in.
Yeah. So today I received a message from my girlfriend. She is a lawyer, right? And she was telling me about how they just passed legislation here in Brazil that basically they expanded the legislation that was already in place to say that racial insults are a crime, and that sorry, I'm a little nervous. But they said that racial insults are a crime, and that basically like if somebody tells jokes that are racially insensitive, they could be arrested for up to 6 months, and they could or they could be fined. And this sparked a really interesting conversation between me and her, because I think we're going to pretty much agree on everything. So this is probably going to be a very quick call. But I wanted to talk about what you guys think of what's acceptable when it comes to not just comedy, but like basically commentary, social commentary, when it comes to issues like these, and how what are some ways to be skeptical to know when someone's being racist, or someone's making social commentary on racial issues?
Okay, should I take this one, Matt?
Yeah, go for it. Because I have thoughts, but I think everybody knows what they are.
Yeah, so I do need to ask, and forgive me if I'm answering a question with a question, because Brazil is one of those countries for years where, much like here in the United States and across the world, when it comes to people of color, that most times when it comes to either criminal justice or racial justice, people who are darker are often the most mistreated. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Yes.
So these new laws that have been put into place, we have to ask the question of who will be either the most benefited or who will be the most impacted negatively by it. Because oftentimes we have to, and I know I think it was Brazil that just went through their own, you just went through your own form of an insurrection recently, correct? That was similar to January 6th, the January 6th
correct.
insurrection. I'm not sure if that had anything to do with it, and I certainly am not trying to put the two together. But we have to consider, what the societal impacts would be, or the impact would be, and who would be more criminalized by these laws. And if we're going, unless there is a serious reform, the only thing that could possibly happen is that more people of color would be criminalized as a result of these new laws if there is no reform to go along with it. So, more folks could be, or more folks could be severely impacted. Those who are economically disadvantaged, and those who are disadvantaged due to the still very ugly stigma of being dark in Latin American countries. And we have to talk about that. We have to talk about how these things impact people, even amongst people of color. So those are questions that I would have as to who would, how would it be beneficial, and who would be more criminalized as a result. Now, personally, I do think that, there could be some social commentary. I mean, I like comedy. I may like some crude, some crude humor. However, if it does cause harm to a group of people, then it needs to be, it needs to be reconsidered. We do have to think about that.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I prefer, so I don't do I'm not a free speech absolutist. I don't do the, there's no sacred cows in comedy or whatever else. I just don't want speech to be illegal. Matter of fact, I've said before, I'd kind of like the racists to be just comfortable enough to let us know who they are, so that they're not, like, the last thing I'd rather have a cop that I know is a racist, so that maybe we can do something about it, than one that is secretly hiding the fact that he's a racist and that type of thing. So I don't know what the law is in Brazil. I don't know what's been passed or anything else. And I don't know how it relates to the rest of Brazil's laws. So my only thoughts on it are, I'm not in favor of legislating what people can say. I'm in favor of building better people through education and through social pressure, making it not okay to use the N word, the R word, the T word, whatever slur you've got. Let's have a social cost to it, so that people act better, and then through acting better, people become better.
Right. Yeah, and I used to think pretty much the same way, but recently I've been wondering whether, because I don't like to go the punitive route, right? The punitive route. I like to go the reform route when it comes to crimes. But I think that doing something like this could actually be beneficial in the sense that it's something that's very prominent here in Brazil, and it could be a way to actually maybe to actually reduce the harm that happens through, because it's not just words, and there are actions too. There are things that people do where they want to physically harm someone, or maybe they want to bully them to a point where they are suicidal or something like that, and I think it could be beneficial in that sense, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't have thoughts beyond that right now, and I'm not even going to dig into the do the people who've been marginalized by a word, should they be okay with picking it up and running with it? and I see the value in that. I see the value in taking ownership of that and making it desensitizing, but I don't get to decide what's right for somebody else to do. All I can say is that, for example, I got loads. Well, there are words that bother me no matter who is using them, just because I know the impact and have changed the way I think about them. So there's words that have been scrubbed from my vocabulary, like the R slur that we've talked about, and words that never really existed in my vocabulary because I'm just old enough and yet just young enough that I was on the cusp of, oh, we ain't saying that no more. And I was like, my dad be like, you don't say that. I better never hear that come out of your mouth at all. And it was like, yes, sir, that word will never come out of that type of thing. I get that, but yeah. So I don't have any more thoughts on that, Lucas, but I appreciate the call.
Right. I'll just have one more thing to say, Matt. The part of me that has been raised on institutional racism and injustice will always think about how this could adversely impact, the economically disadvantaged and people of color who are often policed, at higher rates and criminalized at higher rates than those who have actually perpetuated these harms and have gotten away with it. So if it serves to change that, and it doesn't give any excuses for those who have been economically disadvantaged, right? It doesn't give an excuse at all. But if it levels if it levels that playing field, if it means accountability for people who have historically gotten away with causing that harm and damage, then I'm all for it. I can certainly see it.
All right, Lucas.
Yeah,
thanks so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's been very helpful talking to you guys, and I'm glad I called.
Me too.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, sir. Have a good evening. All right. Unless this is the person who I asked to call in, we may be getting ready to take our final call of the day here. Jason in Connecticut, pronouns are he, him. Welcome.
Hi, Mandisa. Hi, Matt. The reason I called actually is because I saw you were having Mandisa on, and I was very lucky to have met Mandisa at the Recovering from Religion Fall Excursion this past September. So it's awesome to see you again.
Yay! It's nice to see you again, or nice to hear from you.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about some of the sentiments Matt was talking about at the beginning of the show, about this sense of both kind of political and economic unrest, struggling to find a new normal, feeling like these thoughts are intrusive and overwhelming. And I think there's a lot of factors here that make things feel post-2016 so out of control, even though I'd argue they actually aren't much different from conditions in the past. And I was interested in if people want to talk about some of those factors. Because I've got it down to three basic ideas here.
Well, let's hear them.
Sure. Accessibility, perception, and mechanisms. And so what I mean by this is the nature of the information age is that we have access to information that people wouldn't have had in the past. And the fact that we're not geographically isolated anymore like we were in our past, or the fact that we have access to all sorts of information sources, good and bad, means that it's really broken down that barrier that was previously held up by things like expertise. And so I think we can track the lack of trust in institutions, the lack of trust in experts, with the information age is opening up and it's essentially, in a way, democratizing information, but that's had significant downsides as well. The other issue, the second prong here is, I think, perception issues. So I'd argue that inveterate liars, people like George Santos, have been part of our political life forever, since our founding. Some of our founding fathers slung some of the worst shit at each other, lied, cheated, stole. That this really isn't anything new. In fact, I'd argue our economic system is built to encourage this kind of behavior, but it feels different and unique because the people happening in our lifetime. And just like our accessibility issue, I'd argue, these events aren't happening at any higher rates, but we're seeing them more. So the analogy I like to use is the police brutality example. I think the evidence is pretty strong that police brutality rates are actually not much higher than they've been in our past, but we have so much more evidence and information because of cell phones and body cams that this stuff's been going on forever. But now that we see it in our day-to-day, we are more outraged by it. And this makes us feel or perceive that this stuff's getting worse. And the third issue here, I think, is the mechanisms of the modern economy that are really warping our senses here. So we've got algorithms that we don't even understand how they work. And the analogy that comes to my mind here is the thought experiments about AI or robots whose goal is to maximize paperclip production. But I think in real life, what we currently have are algorithms that are designed to maximize engagement and information gathering for the purposes of selling our information to advertisers. And so clearly, that's not as innocuous as the paperclip example, but because we've created and incentivized these bizarre mechanisms of information sharing, people are driven every day to feel horrible, to feel engaged, to feel excited, to be constantly berated with information that is destabilizing. And I think a combination of these three things, and I'm sure many other factors, contribute to why it feels like we're walking on shifting ground, and why it feels like we can't find a new normal, and why everything seems to feel like it's spiraling out of control.
Yeah, I don't really disagree. I mean, I think the data that I've seen bear out what you're saying, and it's like, the part of this is the recognition of how much worse was all this before it was all over the news, before there were body cams, before we had the ability to hold people accountable. But the thing that concerns me is that I'm not quite sure you addressed. You might have. I apologize. I got distracted at one point. Do you think it's the case that the bulk of the public would have always given a pass to such blatant dishonesty? Or is that the thing that's the new normal? It's like, once upon a time, we didn't know how bad it was. But now that we know how bad it is, it shocks me that in the United States, how many elections are 51-49? And over things that I find to be absolutely repugnant, dishonest, people of terrible character. And I have a hard time thinking that nearly 50% of the population just does not care about honesty or character. And yet the data keep showing that seems to be the case.
We also have to ask ourselves, now that we know more, or now that we've seen it more, and we've seen resistance movements, right? We've been through the civil rights movement. We've been through the women's rights movement. We've been through the LGBTQ plus rights movements. There are people who still want things to, remain the same way they did years ago. And so whenever there are, and there's always been changes throughout history. But when those changes come, there'll be resistance to that.
Right.
So I think maybe what we're also seeing here is, people fighting back against that, and people who are resistant to these changes. And we can go back to, January 6th incident, where, there were folks who did not want to accept that. I mean, I'm sure there were other factors as well, but they did not want to accept that Biden had won the presidency. So we are seeing people who have lived in this bubble for a very long time, and based on their very, insulated ways of thinking, and some of it very ignorant, that now there is, like you said, this outrage to, the things that they, even if they didn't know were happening before, they always were. Of course, for some of us who come from marginalized and disadvantaged communities, these things are not new. I would argue that, it was at one point socially acceptable, to hang a person of color or hang someone based on these based on trumped up charges, for lack of a better word, and it'd be okay. Now it's not okay anymore. There's consequences to that. And now there are consequences to the things that are done. There are consequences to politicians who blatantly, lie and who blatantly do these things that, that dupe the general public.
Well, there should be.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely, they should be. But I think that now there will be resistance, to people when these changes come. But it is in how we work together and making sure that people have the same or similar access to this information. Don't just assume that we all have it, because many people still do not. There are many people who still don't have the same access to healthcare and other economic advantages. Just because there's now more information doesn't mean that the playing field is equal or equitable. And so I think it's best not to lose sight of that, and to make sure that people who are in these positions of, leadership and accountability, along with the general public, that they are able to, they are able to, again, be held accountable and making sure that, they are doing what they're supposed to do, for lack of, a better term.
Yep.
I totally agree with you, Mandisa. I think the idea about access to organizing is one of the founding principles here. And if anything, what we've learned is people are getting better at organizing, but this is double-edged in that your political opponents are also getting better at organizing. And so the same way that good information can be spread through, community action like this, so too can bad information be politicized. And I think also, to your point, the fact that we have access to this information, I think, has heightened people's recognition about how unequitable our society is. And this is what's fomenting and fanning the flames of people feeling resentment in no matter what direction. And I think what we're feeling is that we're farther and farther away from the levers of power, and it feels like no one's at the levers of power. And the people who get in are these horrible and veteran frauds, and it causes a real sense of kind of nihilism and hopelessness that we're supposed to have these systems and institutions that are accountable to us. Yet the more information we get and the more evidence we see and the more publicly we live our lives, the access feels farther and farther away. And I think that's responsible for a lot of those feelings that Matt was alluding to, of feeling like the shifting sand, the no stable ground, how do we find a normal?
Yeah, and it's overwhelming. We have to acknowledge that it can be very overwhelming.
It's it's exhausting, is what I was getting ready to say.
Yeah, all right. Well, thank you for batting around my ideas. I'm thrilled to talk to you both. And I guess just as a parting note, I've been thinking about this a little bit, and I'm curious, Matt, if you've any thoughts on this. I've been struggling for a while now to really steelman and speak out for myself some of the arguments for hard atheism and for anti-theism. And I'm just wondering if you'd be able to maybe verbalize some of that or your thoughts on it, because it's something I've been struggling with, because I feel that's the position I'm at, and I'm just struggling with how to formalize it.
I've done it a couple times. I don't think I'm going to go into it tonight.
Okay.
Just because, it's one of those things. It's a chunk of work to explain, and we're coming up at the tail end of all this tonight at Super Chats. But maybe call in another time, or maybe I'll just make it a subject, because I've avoided defending strong atheism because I think it's unnecessary. I think it unnecessarily shifts the burden of proof. That said, I think it actually is it's weird to say strong atheism in a weaker context, a position that can be defended.
Yeah.
And provided you're operating like in a colloquial sense. I think that's probably the best way to go about it.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that, and I look forward to hopefully seeing you again next year, Mandisa, at the excursion. So thank you guys both, and have a great night.
Awesome.
You too.
Thanks. All right. On that note, whoops. I hit the wrong button, so somebody else can clear out the queue. But we've cleared out the queue, and that means that Jimmy, I know you're feeling, there, but we got to do super chats, and so I'm calling you out of the funk. We'll alternate on these. I'll go ahead and start off tonight. 1999 from Greg Markowski. Thanks so much, Greg. It's always a pleasure to see, and you're the first or nearly the first almost every week. Always great when you have Mandisa on. I agree. By the way, I give to your show early because I'm always afraid I'll get distracted or fall asleep. You're not boring. I'm just old. Hope Jimmy's feeling better. I trust me, I know about falling asleep. Arden and I have been watching a couple of shows lately, and they're shows that I actually like, and yet I'm doing so much. I'm up early. I'm an urban rancher dealing with rats and snakes and everything else, and I will sit down in the chair, and if there's a good chance I'll fall asleep no matter how much I like it. Thanks, Greg. Can you see these, Mandy? So we're going to alternate them?
Yeah, sure. So, there's a super chat from LA Silver Surfers, and they're currently debating a theist on FB. What's the verse where they prove that they have to prove their faith?
What's the verse where they have proved their faith? I apologize, especially since you went to all the trouble to super chat it, but I have no idea what you're asking. Maybe tag me in chat and ask for a little clarity or clarify it a little bit more, and I'll see if I can get in there. $10 from Mulder T. Malcontent. I know we're all African, really, but how do you feel about preserving the traditions of cultures, or should they be lost to history? Some may be gone forever, including their languages and cultures. Yeah, lots of things are going to go extinct. I don't care. I think that for me, just me personally, everybody else, I'm not going to be offended if somebody who desperately is trying to keep aspects of their culture. It's just, it doesn't bother me. And I might be the weirdo. Maybe I have it's not something I need to cling to.
For me, I think it's good to know the history of things, good and bad. I know there's a saying that history is always told by those who are victorious, but I think for some of these cultures and for some historic facts, for years, we have lived in a Eurocentric society where, everything that came out of Europe was always good, but now we know that isn't true. We know that there are a lot of very damaging things that have come out of European history and other forms of history and cultures throughout the world. I think it's important to know it all as much as we can. But like you said, Matt, there are some things that may, become lost, especially with as war inclined as a species as we tend to be. Yeah. And this is historic, right? There are aspects of history that are going to be destroyed, but just like the scientific method, history is always being updated. There is new information that is being found, and if it serves to help bring more education and more information to people, then I am for it. I think it's always good for us to be honest and real and objective about it.
Yeah. By the way, the verse. Mm-hmm. The verse that LA Silver Surfers was looking for is 1 Peter 3:15, of course. There was something about the phrasing that threw me off there, but yes. Be prepared at all time to give the reason for the faith that's within you and to do so with gentleness and kindness, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, thanks, Mulder. My thing is that I think good ideas are going to survive on their merits, and that includes aspects of culture. I'd rather we didn't lose anything, but languages change. I mean, Latin became, there's a whole bunch of Latin languages, Spanish, etc. And then those changed. And the English that they spoke in Shakespeare's time is different from it is now. I don't mind that some stuff falls by the wayside. It doesn't mean that much to me in the sense that it doesn't help me know who I am. But it is important
Right.
about knowing who we were and where we came from so that maybe we don't repeat those things.
Correct. Yes, I agree 100% there.
All right, continuing on. $10 from, oh yeah, this isn't you.
Oh, okay. So aren't the laws of logic just descriptions, possibly summed up with this is not that, something is either this or that?
Sure. But they're not merely descriptive. They are the foundation of reason, which makes them prescriptive. They're descriptive. They're just not. They're inviolate, as far as we can tell. But it's weird to say that something's descriptive when it couldn't be any other way. But yes, identity and non-contradiction excluded middle end up getting to everything is what it is, isn't what it isn't, and nothing is neither or both. $20 from Perch Dragon, just because the Phoenix community loves and supports Mandisa and the work of Black Nonbelievers.
Yes,
there you go.
Thank you so much. I know who that is. Yes, thank you so much. We appreciate you, and thank you to Eric, who supported directly to be in during the show. So we appreciate that as well. It's a pleasure to be here, as always, with you, Matt, and I always appreciate being a guest on the shows. It really is invigorating to talk to people. And I don't know how y'all do this regularly, but this is work. People need to realize that this type of thing is work, and it is activism, and it makes a difference in people's lives. So thank you.
I don't know how to not do this. I'm after 18 years almost. I'm just it's a habit. My life would suck if I didn't do this, but
yeah, I feel the same way as well now. This has become my life, and as challenging as it may be sometimes, I wouldn't trade it for the world because and this goes to our next super chat. Thank you so much. Awesome to see you again, Mandisa. You are one of the most eloquent thinkers I've heard. And Matt, great to see you as usual. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for supporting this platform. And we really do appreciate it. I love being on with Matt. And this is, it's always a great time.
Yep. Thanks, Morgan. $10 from Larry Fishman. The U.S. government is set up to ensure permanent minority rule by the capitalist oligarch class. American democracy was nullified by the 1976 Buckley v. Vallejo Supreme Court decision. Yeah, I don't agree. But oh, we just lost this stuff. Oh, was that the last one? Aha, that was the last one. Thanks so much. Jimmy's feeling ill and so couldn't talk in my ear, couldn't speak in my ear. So let's do this. I want Jimmy to get some rest. Everybody, normally I would sit here and say, I would try to be supportive of Jimmy, who would be like, you guys need to send in more super chats. You need to send in some more super chats right now so you can keep these people here and answering your questions. And I would do that, but I genuinely want my friend to go get some rest and feel better. So let's run through the announcements real quick. First of all, thanks again to Quill Coffee for screening calls today, all of our moderators in chat, and to Mandisa for agreeing to come on moderately short notice, even though it's a month late. So I guess it's only somewhat short notice. But tomorrow is the Transatlantic Call-In Show with Katy and Ben. On Sunday, Jimmy and I will be doing the Sunday show, and then we will be doing a Zoom meetup with all Patreon supporters at 7 p.m. Central. It's the best way to support things so that we can get moving to regular podcasts for each of the shows. On Monday, Forrest is going to be doing Skeptalk. On Tuesday, Jimmy and Owen will be doing Hostility. And next Wednesday, you can be right back here with me again on the Hang Up with Heathen Queen. So we've got a full schedule for the next week or so of awesome content for people to jump in on. I'm going to do my best to watch and participate all of it. And wow, thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks for your support. Please, if you are interested in supporting Black Nonbelievers in not just with your pocketbook, but by starting an affiliate, by applying to help run affiliate, or to assist, because as Mandisa pointed out, an affiliate in one area can have multiple people and should have multiple people because there's a lot of work and it's too much for one person to do. Please reach out. The links are down in chat, and Mandisa's already given. Mandisa, I will give you the last word. Tell people how to find you.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, you can reach out to us at our website, BlackNonbelievers.org. We are all over social media on Facebook at Black Nonbelievers. We are on Instagram at BNonbelievers Inc. We are on Twitter at BNonbelievers. The B and the N are capitalized. And also do subscribe to our YouTube channel at Black Nonbelievers Inc., where we also have a show called In the Cut. It airs every first and third Saturdays of the month. We have some amazing guests lined up for this year. We just had our first show with the Afro Atheist, which was amazing. Please do like and subscribe to our channel, and that also and also do, if you are so inclined, please do donate to support the work. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and if you've never been on a cruise before and you would like to go, please do check out our flexible options for BNCCon 2023, where Matt will be one of our featured speakers this year. So once again, thank you all for tuning in, and thank you, Matt and Jimmy, for having me.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Good night.